Okay, let's just start with this. Ever tried to live on $7.25 an hour? I mean, could you even imagine?
It's tough to really picture it day to day.
Right, because when you actually look at the math, $7.25 an hour, that translates to maybe $290 a week. Before taxes, mind you.
Mm-hmm. And that works out to just $15,080 a year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So really think about it for a second. Could you live on that? Because, here's where it gets really interesting, maybe even a little challenging.
Go on.
The United Nations, they suggest that for just a basic level of human dignity, a worker needs to earn at least $31,200 per year.
Right. That's their benchmark for dignity.
So what our sources are pointing out is that full-time minimum wage workers here in America, they're earning less than half of what the UN says is needed for a dignified existence.
Yeah, less than half. That's the core tension we're exploring today. Today, we're diving deep into this question. Does America's federal minimum wage sort of conflict with international human rights standards?
We're going to unpack the actual cost of living.
Mm-hmm. And look at some common ideas about minimum wage earners. Maybe bust a few myths.
And we'll also look at cities that have actually raised wages, and, well, they seem to be doing okay, even thriving.
Exactly. So this isn't just about economics. It's really a profound look at, well, human dignity and work.
Okay, so let's zoom in. What does living on $7.25 an hour actually look like for people? What did the research show us? And any personal stories?
Oh, absolutely. The stories really ground these numbers. We found several examples, like Teresa in Alabama.
Oh, yeah?
She's working 60 hours a week. 60. Juggling 2 minimum wage jobs.
Wow, 60 hours.
Yeah, and her take-home pay, about $1,800 a month. But here's the kicker. Her rent alone is $1,200.
It's just the rent.
Just the rent. That leaves $600 for everything else. Food, utilities, gas, clothes, for her and her 2 kids.
That's incredibly tight.
It's a constant struggle. And then there's Marcus in Arkansas.
What's his story?
He stocks shelves overnight at Walmart. Now, Walmart, just last quarter, reported, $5.14 billion in profit?
Billion.
With a B. Right. But Marcus, he earned $15,080 last year, before taxes. And this is telling many of his coworkers, also working full-time, are on food stamps.
So they're working full-time but still need assistance.
Precisely. And one more, Jennifer in Georgia. She serves coffee at McDonald's, another huge company, $1.76 billion profit last quarter.
Mm-hmm.
She makes $7.25 an hour, the exact same wage someone made back in 2009.
2009.
Yeah, and our sources point out, back then gas was like $2.35 a gallon. A dozen eggs, maybe $1.72. Costs have gone way up. Her wage stayed flat.
It's really striking when you put it in that historical context. Stuck at $7.25 since July 24, 2009.
16 years.
16 years without a federal increase. That's the longest period.
Ever.
Right? Since the minimum wage was created back in 1938.
It is the longest stretch without an update.
So let's do the math that, our sources suggest Congress isn't really doing. What does that $15,080 annual income break down to monthly after taxes?
Okay, let's break it down. So $15,080 a year. After taxes, you're looking at roughly $13,000 take-home. Divide that by 12, it's about $1,083 a month. That's what someone has to live on.
$1,083 a month. Now compare that to basic expenses for 2025. What did our sources find?
Well, the averages are pretty sobering. Average rent for a one-bedroom, $1,500.
More than the entire monthly income.
Right there, you're already in the red. But let's add it up. Health insurance premium, average $450. Food for one person, $350. Utilities, maybe $200. Gas for a car, another $150.
Okay.
Add all that up, you get $2,650 in basic monthly expenses.
Compared to a $1,083 income.
Yeah. That's a shortfall, a deficit of $1,567 every single month.
So the conclusion is pretty unavoidable then.
It is. A full-time minimum wage worker literally cannot afford to rent a simple one-bedroom apartment anywhere. In any state in the U.S., the math just, it doesn't work.
That's a stark reality. How does this square, or maybe how does it not square, with those international human rights standards you mentioned?
That's really the crux of it, isn't it? Article 23 of the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights is quite clear. It says, everyone who works has the right to, and I'm paraphrasing slightly, just and favorable pay that ensures an existence worthy of human dignity for themselves and their family.
Worthy of human dignity.
Exactly. And the UN Global Compact goes further, defining a living wage. It's not just survival, it's affording a decent standard of living. That means food, water, housing, yes, but also education, healthcare, care, transportation, clothing, the basics for participating in society.
And does the UN put a number on that, like cost-wise?
They do provide estimates. For a single adult with no kids, they figure around $48,000 a year is needed for those basic needs. That's about $23 an hour.
$48,000 compared to $15,080.
Right. And for family, 2 adults, 2 kids, the estimate jumps to over $117,000.
Wow. The gap is huge.
It's enormous. It really highlights the difference between the federal minimum wage and what international bodies consider necessary for dignity.
So it sounds like, the richest country on earth is really lagging. How does America stack up globally on minimum wage?
Yeah, the comparisons are quite revealing. Our sources looked at monthly minimum wages across developed nations. Get this. Luxembourg, over $2,600 a month.
Okay.
Australia, around $2,560, which is over $15.50 an hour. U.S. Germany, nearly $2,200 a month, almost $13 an hour. The U.K., almost $2,500. France, over $1,800.
In the U.S.?
The U.S., $1,257 a month. That's $7.25 an hour. We rank 19th, behind every other major developed nation.
19th.
Yeah. It shows that many other countries, with different-sized economies, they've made a different choice. They've set a higher wage floor.
So connecting this back, if wages are this low but companies are profitable, who picks up the slack? You mentioned workers on food stamps. Is there a taxpayer connection?
That's exactly what a Government Accountability Office study cited in our sources looked into. It found that some of the biggest, most profitable companies in the U.S. are also among the top employers of people relying on SNAP food stamps and Medicaid.
Like who?
Well, the big names. Walmart, in just 11 states studied, had over 14,500 employees on SNAP. McDonald's, almost 8,800. Amazon, over 4,200. Dollar General, nearly 4,500.
And these people are working.
That's the key point. 70% of the 21 million Americans on government assistance programs work full-time.
So they have jobs, often full-time jobs, but the pay isn't enough to live on, so taxpayers are essentially subsidizing their low wages.
That's the argument presented in our sources. Research from UC Berkeley estimated this costs taxpayers around $153 billion per year, subsidizing companies like Walmart and McDonald's reporting billions in profit because they don't pay a living wage.
$153 billion a year.
Yeah, there's a quote in our sources from Senator Bernie Sanders calling it morally obscene that taxpayers are forced to subsidize these huge profitable corporations. It definitely raises questions about fairness and corporate responsibility.
And this whole situation gets worse when you factor in inflation, right? The loss of purchasing power.
Absolutely. A dollar today buys way less than it did in 2009 when the minimum wage was last raised. Our sources say today's dollar has only about 70% of the purchasing power it had then.
So that $7.25 is worth even less in real terms.
Much less. It's lost about 42% of its value since its peak buying power back in 1968. If it had just kept up with inflation since '68, it would be $13.46 today.
But it's $7.25.
Stuck at $7.25. Meanwhile, think about costs since 2009. Gas, up 85%. Rent, up 64%. Food, 47% higher. Healthcare, up 60%. College tuition, a staggering 70% increase.
And the minimum wage increased during that time?
0%. Flatlined.
Okay. So knowing all that, let's tackle some of the common arguments, maybe myths, that we hear against raising the minimum wage. What does the data actually say? First one, minimum wage jobs are just for teenagers.
Yeah, that's a really persistent one. But the reality, according to our sources, totally different. The average age of a minimum wage worker is 35.
35, not 16.
Not 16. In fact, 88% are over the age of 20. And nearly a third, 28%, have children they're supporting.
So these are adults trying to survive, often supporting families.
Exactly, not kids looking for pocket money.
Okay, myth 2. Raising the minimum wage kills jobs. This is a big one we always hear. What's the evidence from places that have actually done it?
It's probably the most common concern, right? But the evidence is, well, complex, but often points the other way. Look at Seattle. They raised their minimum wage significantly, up to nearly $20 an hour in some cases.
And what happened? Did businesses close down?
Their economy has actually thrived. Unemployment hit historic lows. And specifically the restaurant industry, which people always worry about, restaurant employment grew.
Grew. Interesting. Any other examples?
Houston saw something similar after implementing $15 an hour. In many sectors, restaurant jobs increased. And UC Berkeley research specifically looked at Seattle and found the wage hike raised pay, as intended, but without reducing overall employment.
So the prediction of mass job losses didn't really pan out in those cases.
Not according to that data. Businesses adapted.
What about small businesses? The argument is often they just can't afford it. Is that universally true? How do other countries manage?
It's a genuine concern for small business owners, no doubt. But it's interesting to look abroad. Countries like Portugal, their minimum wage is over $1,000 a month. Poland, nearly $1,100 a month. These aren't economic giants compared to the U.S.
Like smaller economies.
Much smaller. Yet they manage to mandate and sustain higher minimum wages than the U.S. federal level. It suggests that while transitions might need support, it's not impossible for smaller businesses or economies to adapt.
Okay, last myth. The market should set wages. Let supply and demand work it out. What's the counter-argument based on the reality we've discussed?
Well, the argument from our sources is basically that the market, in this case, has failed. When you have people working full-time jobs, sometimes multiple jobs, and they still can't afford basic necessities like rent and food.
And they need food stamps.
Exactly. When they need public assistance just to survive despite working full-time in the richest country on earth, the argument is that the market isn't delivering a wage compatible with basic human dignity. It suggests the system is broken.
So it seems like cities and states aren't waiting for federal action. You mentioned Seattle, Houston.
Yeah.
Are there other success stories?
Oh, definitely. Our sources highlight quite a few. San Francisco has an $18.67 minimum wage, still a massive tech hub, plenty of restaurants. Washington, D.C. is at $17.95. Their economy is booming. New York City, $16 minimum wage, more restaurants than ever, reportedly. Denver, $18.29. Still growing. Businesses are thriving. It shows it's possible.
And it's not just citywide data, right? There's specific businesses that made it work. You mentioned Ivar Seafood and Molly Moon's ice cream earlier.
Right. Those are great examples from Seattle. Ivar Seafood, they jumped to $15 way back in 2015. They also got rid of tipping and just raised prices by about 21%.
Bold move. How did it go?
Their revenue soared. Employees were happier. They had stable income. Customers kept coming. And some of their workers now make close to $80,000 a year.
Wow. And Molly Moon's.
Similar story, pays well above minimum wage. They expanded from one ice cream shop to 12. The owner, Molly Moon Neitzel, she actually said something really insightful. When people have more money in their pockets, the first place they spend it is in restaurants and on food.
So higher wages could actually boost local economies.
That's the idea. It creates a positive feedback loop. More spending power, more business.
And looking globally again, you mentioned the U.S. ranks 19th. What else can we learn from other countries? You mentioned Denmark.
Yeah, the Nordic countries like Denmark, Finland, Sweden are interesting. They often don't have a government-mandated minimum wage.
No minimum wage.
Not a federal one like here. Instead, they have really strong unions that negotiate wages sector by sector. So, for example, a McDonald's worker in Denmark makes the equivalent of about $22 an hour through union bargaining.
$22 an hour at McDonald's, compared to $7.25 here.
It's a stark difference. And Germany, they did introduce a minimum wage, about $12.93 an hour now, back in 2015. There were predictions of economic disaster.
Right.
The economy didn't collapse. Unemployment actually went down. Businesses adapted. And now the European Union has this directive pushing all member states to ensure minimum wages provide a decent living, aiming for at least 60% of the median wage.
And the U.S. is at?
About 34% of the median wage. So a big gap compared to the EU recommendation.
It really brings it back to this core idea. It's not just numbers on a spreadsheet. It's about dignity. There was that quote from Dr. Joseph Chuin.
Yeah, it's powerful. If a person is compelled to eat their next meal out of a garbage can, to live on the street, or lacks the ability to meet basic needs for survival, then we can rightly conclude that one's dignity is impugned.
So when work doesn't even provide enough for basic survival, it's an affront to dignity.
That's the argument. When full-time work leaves you needing food stamps or unable to afford shelter, our sources argue it borders on exploitation. And there are hidden costs for everyone when this happens.
What kind of hidden costs?
Well, think about it. Less consumer spending slows down the whole economy. More people needing government help might mean higher taxes for everyone eventually. Poverty itself is linked to higher crime rates, poorer health outcomes, which drive up healthcare costs for all of us. Less opportunity for education means a less competitive workforce down the line.
So investing in workers isn't just charity. It's potentially good for the whole society.
That's what the data from states with higher minimum wages seems to suggest. They tend to have stronger economies, better health outcomes, lower poverty rates. It points towards a societal benefit.
Given all this, who typically fights against raising the minimum wage, according to our sources, And what's their reasoning?
The main opposition, historically and currently, comes from groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, the National Restaurant Association, and various corporate lobbying groups. They've been instrumental in blocking federal action for these past 16 years.
And their arguments usually center on.
Business costs, potential job losses, inflation fears, competitiveness, the things we've sort of discussed.
But didn't you say McDonald's, for example, adapted, even though they lobbied against it?
Exactly. That's the contradiction our sources highlight. Companies lobby against wage increases, warning of dire consequences. But when cities or states raise wages anyway, these same large, profitable companies often adapt, adjust prices slightly if needed, and remain profitable.
So it raises the question.
It does. Why allow corporations making billions in profit to pay wages so low that their full-time employees need public assistance to survive? That's the question posed.
Is there anything happening now, legislatively, to change the federal minimum wage?
There's a proposal called the Raise the Wage Act of 2025. The idea is to increase the federal minimum wage gradually, reaching $17 an hour by the year 2030.
Okay, $17 by 2030.
And importantly, it also aims to get rid of the sub-minimum wages. That's a really low $2.13 an hour for tipped workers and different rates for workers with disabilities. It wants one fair wage for everyone.
What impact would that have?
Estimates suggest it would affect over 22 million workers directly and indirectly, boosting wages by about $70 billion annually, giving people more spending power.
But even $17 by 2030, based on what you said about living costs, is that really enough anymore?
That's the challenge. Our sources are pretty clear that $15 is already outdated in many places, and $17 by 2030 might also fall short of ensuring real dignity and covering basic costs. They talk about real solutions for real people.
And what do those real solutions look like?
Well, first, an immediate jump to $15, then phasing up to $20 by 2027. Crucially, after that, indexing it to inflation or median wage growth so it doesn't lose value again.
So it keeps up automatically.
Right, and definitely eliminating all sub-minimum wages. No more $2.13 for tipped workers, one fair wage. They also suggest things like sector bargaining, allowing unions to negotiate wages across entire industries, like in Denmark, providing tax credits to help small businesses transition, real penalties for wage theft, maybe even jail time for executives in severe cases, and ending what they call corporate welfare, stopping subsidies or tax breaks for companies paying poverty wages.
That sounds much more comprehensive.
It aims to address the root causes. As one economist, Sylvia Allegretto, put it, it is shameful that the U.S., the wealthiest country in the world, ranks #19 on minimum wages. Nowhere in the U.S. can a full-time worker meet their basic needs on the federal minimum wage. And the point is, this is a choice. We choose this outcome.
So wrapping this up, what does this all mean for you, our listener? It feels like every day we keep the minimum wage at $7.25. It's like we're sending a message. A message that millions of Americans' full-time labor, their time, their effort, isn't even worth enough to cover basic security. It touches on that core human rights principle. Work should provide dignity, not keep people trapped in poverty.
And it's important to remember, this isn't an unsolvable problem. Other wealthy countries demonstrate that it's possible to pay living wages. Their economies function, their people have a greater baseline of dignity.
So the obstacle isn't economic impossibility.
According to our sources, the main obstacle is political will. The will to prioritize human dignity alongside, or perhaps even above, corporate profit margins. The federal minimum wage level is a policy choice. And we, collectively, can choose differently.
Is anyone actively fighting for this change?
Yes. Groups like the American Human Rights Initiative Foundation, AHRI, they firmly believe a living wage is a fundamental human right. They're working for comprehensive reform.
What kind of work do they do?
Their economic justice initiatives involve supporting movements like the Fight for $15 and a Union, lobbying Congress for legislation like the Raise the Wage Act, and educating communities about wage rights and the realities we've discussed.
But it's not just up to organizations, right? What can individuals do if they feel strongly about this?
Absolutely. Your voice, your actions matter. Our sources list several things. Call your representatives. Urge them to support the Raise the Wage Act or similar legislation.
Okay.
Make conscious choices about where you spend your money. Support businesses known for paying fair wages.
Use your consumer power.
Exactly. Show up for labor actions like strikes or protests for fair pay if you can. Talk to people. Educate friends, family, your community about the reality of living on poverty wages. Share these stories.
Spread awareness.
And, of course, vote. Support candidates who clearly champion living wages. Get involved with or support unions fighting for better contracts. Document and share stories of how low wages affect real people in your community.
So lots of potential actions.
Yeah, the takeaway is that change is possible, but it requires engagement. This situation isn't inevitable.
It really comes down to a fundamental question, doesn't it?
I think so. The question isn't really just, can we afford to raise the minimum wage? Maybe the more pressing question is, can we afford not to?
What do you mean?
Well, every day we maintain wages that keep full-time workers in poverty. What does that say about our society's values? Are we choosing corporate profits over basic human dignity? What kind of society are we building if work itself doesn't allow people to live securely?
That's a powerful thought to leave people with.
It's something to consider. And if you want to support the fight for economic justice as a human right, the American Human Rights Initiative Foundation relies on donations to continue their advocacy, legal support, and education efforts.
And where can people find them?
You can learn more about their work and how to get involved or donate on their website. It's AmericanHumanRightsInitiativeFoundation.org.
AmericanHumanRightsInitiativeFoundation.org.
We'll make sure that's in our notes.
Well,
Thank you for diving deep with us today on this really critical issue.